Do you want a motorcycle really, really bad, like so bad you can't stand it, but all you have is $1,000 cash or less? Stick with me a few minutes and we'll see if we can make this happen for you. What's up everyone? It's Alex. So today I'm going to bring you 5 ways to get a motorcycle with $1,000 cash or less. Quick disclaimer. I'm talking about used motorcycles in this, okay? Used motorcycles. Get that through your head. You got $1,000 or less, you're definitely getting a used motorcycle. That shouldn't need explaining, but we're talking used motorcycles here. Secondly, these are just some suggestions and ideas. I don't want to hear it if I don't come up with the solution that somebody else likes. Maybe you got a motorcycle for less than $1,000 by some unconventional way that I'm not going to cover here. This is just some suggestions and ideas, just throwing it out there. Information for new people that want a motorcycle and don't have very much money. Entertainment for the rest of you that already have motorcycles and just like to hear me ramble about stupid shit. Without further ado, let's go. Number 1! Buy a small bike! Okay, suggestion number 1 is going to be that you buy a small motorcycle. When I say small motorcycle, I mean find a used Honda Rebel, Suzuki GZ250, Yamaha Virago, V-Star 250, Ninja 250. The list goes on and on and on. What I'm talking about here is just find a small used motorcycle. It doesn't even have to be that old. You find one of the later years of a Honda Rebel 250 or something, it's still going to be really, really cheap. If somebody's selling an old used 250 motorcycle, or if somebody's selling a used 250 at all, if it's over $1,000 really, like I'm not going to say there are not good late model used 250s out there for more than that, but really, most of your used 250s at this point are going to be a few years old at least. They're going to be inexpensive. You're going to be able to find a small used motorcycle for less than $1,000. And depending on when you watch this video, prices change. They ebb, they flow, they go up, they go down. But for the most part, if you're looking private party especially, you should be able to find a small 250 to 300cc bike for well less than $1,000 cash, okay? Dealers, maybe not. Dealers are going to charge a little bit more for stuff because they provide other services and everything. Not going to get into that, not the scope of this video. But find you a used 250 or 300cc motorcycle. You should be able to snag one of those for less than $1,000 cash pretty easily depending on where you live, okay? Number 2! Buy an old-ass bike! Okay, suggestion number 2, and probably my favorite suggestion on the entire list, is just to find an older used motorcycle. I'm talking about bikes from particularly this range, okay? Look for bikes from the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, all right? If you go older than that, like back to 70s and before, you're getting into the classic realm where stuff is going to start being more expensive, at least if it's in good running order. If it's broken, it's a different story, but good running bikes from the 70s and before are going to cost you more money because then you're getting into true classics and everything. Bikes from the later 2000s to more recent years, you're going to start getting into more and more money because they're newer, less miles, etc. Now, I'm not saying if you find an older motorcycle, you may not find an older motorcycle with, 2,000 miles on it for less than $1,000. But if you're reasonable on your mileage requirements for the fact that you have $1,000 cash or less, you can definitely find an older motorcycle used in good running condition for less than $1,000. And while we're talking about that on mileage, mileage for used motorcycles, people think like, oh, a bike's got over 20,000 miles on it, that bike's just done. Absolutely not the case. If you're talking quality Japanese motorcycles or some better Harleys and a lot of other stuff, if you're talking quality made motorcycles, they can run and run and run and run with proper maintenance. I've seen motorcycles with 200,000 or 300,000 miles on them from Honda and Yamaha and companies like that. They're still running just fine because they're well maintained. So I'm not saying go out and buy a 100,000 mile motorcycle if you have $1,000 because you're not going to be able to fix it if you need to. But what I'm saying is be open-minded with your mileage. Just because a bike has 30,000, 40,000 miles on it, if it's under $1,000 and it's been well taken care of, that could still be a really good motorcycle. Flip side, you may have things to pay for down the road, but if you're buying a bike for less than $1,000, keep in mind you're probably going to have to work on it at some point and do proper maintenance. It's just going to be part of it, okay? But I'm talking about bikes like, if you can find a Ninja 500, a Suzuki GS 500, a Vulcan 500, V-Star 650, any of your 600 Yamahas like from the 80s, your older Viragos, a Honda Shadow of almost any variety and year range from the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. The list goes on and on. Suzuki Savage slash S40, Suzuki C50s, and before that it was called the Volusia, Suzuki M50s slash Marauders. The list just goes and goes and goes and goes. I'm not going to get into all of them, but find medium-sized motorcycles from the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. You can definitely get some crazy good deals on them, okay? Easily, especially like Ninja 500 and stuff, man. Ninja 500 is a fantastic, very hard to tear up motorcycle that you can get a lot of use out of, ride fast enough, great motorcycle for what it is. It's carbureted, but great motorcycle for what it is, and you can easily find those for less than $1,000 cash all over the place, generally speaking, with decent miles on them and everything. So do a little bit of looking, have a little bit of patience, look for a little bit older motorcycles in that medium size range, and you can definitely find those used for less than $1,000 private party. Number 3, learn to fix shit. Suggestion number 3 is another one of my favorites, and that's going to be find motorcycles used that need some repair that you can buy for cheap. What I mean from that is you might find someone that, you know, laid down their sport bike or something, tore up all their plastics, but mechanically it's fine. So if you can replace some plastics, you can get a whole lot cheaper. I bought a CBR 600 that way one time. 06 or 07 CBR 600 had been laid down. Guy got scared of it. I bought it, put a new set of plastics on it. I had an awesome CBR 600 that I had, you know, like 800 bucks in or something like that. So you can find motorcycles out there that have been laid down or just have been sitting around for a long time. The point is you can find used motorcycles out there that need some repair and need some love, and oftentimes you can get those very, very, very cheap and inexpensive because the owners don't want to put the time and energy into fixing them, or maybe they're just scared of it or something. So if you're willing to put some time into fixing, if you've got some tools, if you're willing to get a service manual, you got a little bit of mechanical mojo going on, oftentimes you can get crazy good deals and get awesome motorcycles for way cheaper if you're willing to fix them and put the time into them. My CB500 when I had it, of course that was a 70s bike, but my CB500 when I got that was literally just a frame with a motor in it and then 3 or 4 boxes of parts that I had to put back together and build from the ground up. But I bought that bike for 500 bucks. A couple of months later, I had a nice running CB500 cafe bike for less than $800 total. So that's what I'm talking about. Learn to fix motorcycles, learn to work on them a little bit, be willing to put the time and energy into it, and you can have an awesome bike for less than $1,000 cash. Number 4, salvage and mechanics liens. All right, number 4 is going to be one that not a lot of people are going to know about, and depending on your area, this might be easier or harder. You're just going to have to get on Google or something, do some research, and see what you can find. Basically, I need to backtrack for a second and explain to you what happens when a motorcycle mechanic has a bike and fixes it and the owner never pays the bill. If a motorcycle mechanic, and this is in most areas, I know I've got a lot of viewers overseas that might work different, but in the US, in most areas, most states, if a mechanic has a vehicle that they have worked on and the owner refuses to pay the bill and come get it, after a certain amount of time, that mechanic or that shop can file what's called a mechanics lien on the title. Different states are different, but it basically gives the owner a certain amount of time to come pay the bill and claim the motorcycle, or they forfeit the title to the motorcycle. The mechanic actually puts a lien on the title. The mechanic can get the title of the motorcycle basically for the cost of their repair bill if the owner is just unwilling to pay for it and abandons the motorcycle. What happens in a lot of these cases is those bikes, the mechanic shop, they don't want it. They fix bikes, you know, they don't sell bikes. So a lot of your independent mechanics will then sell the bikes, say on Craigslist, Facebook, or whatever they decide to do. A lot of times they will sell those bikes for really, really cheap, just trying to get the repair bill back out of them, you know? So if you find, especially just a little bit older bike that a mechanic has got a mechanics lien on, a lot of times you can get a nice running bike that you don't have to work on or anything for less than $1,000 because they're just trying to get their repair bill back out of it. So that goes along with salvage too. What happens a lot of times when an insurance company totals out a motorcycle, if it's not worth very much, like say somebody lays down their bike and the bike's not worth but maybe 1,500 bucks or something like that, a lot of times that insurance company is going to total the motorcycle and just cut the person a check. The insurance company then usually ends up auctioning off or selling back off that motorcycle with a salvage title. But really, the motorcycle's fine. It wasn't totaled and smashed. The motorcycle is fine. It just needs a little bit of love. And a lot of times, if you can find where the insurance companies are selling or auctioning those or something like that, you can get those bikes for really, really inexpensive too if your state and your area does salvage titles. You might have a salvage title, but you can have a good running motorcycle for really cheap. So check into your area. See if you have local independent motorcycle mechanics in your area. See if they're selling any bikes for the cost of a repair bill. See if they've got anything that had a mechanics lien on. Check and see if there's anywhere in your area that auctions off insurance bikes, or see if anybody's got a salvage title bike for sale that runs just fine. Don't go buying a bike that's got a bent frame or has actually been just smashed up and stuff unless you're willing to work on it. But try these two things. Think outside the box a little bit. Sometimes you can get a really, really good bike for less than $1,000 if you're willing to see if there's any mechanic shops in your area that have got something for sale that somebody abandoned. As long as they've got the mechanics lien, got a title, don't buy a bike without a title. Or maybe you're willing to buy a bike with a salvage title that's fine, but just wasn't worth the insurance company fixing. Number 5! Financing! Okay, number 5, and the last suggestion I have is going to be the least suggested option. Like, this would be my last resort for you if you absolutely have to. If you just can't stand a small motorcycle, or you're way too big for a small motorcycle, or you just want nothing to do with a small motorcycle, and you can't find any good used older motorcycles in your area for less than $1,000, you're not willing to work on stuff, and you can't find anything for a mechanics lien or something like that, just none of these other options are going to work for you. Yes, you can take your $1,000 cash or less, you can go to a motorcycle shop, and you can finance the motorcycle. That being said, if you have absolute dirt, bad credit, like you know your credit's bad. If your credit's bad, you know your credit's bad. If you have just absolute terrible credit, it might not work out. But if your credit is at least decent or better, you should be able to take $1,000 cash or less, go to a motorcycle shop, and you can finance a motorcycle. For most people that don't have that much cash to spend, I don't recommend it because it's probably going to be a struggle for you to make your payments. If you can possibly stand it to save up more cash and buy a bike for cash, I would much more recommend that. Just throwing that out there for those of you who want to hate on financing. But I have helped plenty of people through my motorcycle career get motorcycles financed. They've used that to build their credit up. They've used that to get riding when they couldn't afford it otherwise. I've had a lot of people finance bikes and be very, very, very happy and very successful with it and not get into money problems. If you're going to do it, what I would recommend, you have $1,000 or less cash to put down, you need to go aim for a bike in the $5,000 or less category, okay? Don't get too greedy. Don't get eyes that are too big for your stomach. Go look at bikes that are $5,000 and under. Put your cash down, finance the bike. If it's under $5,000 with $1,000 or less down, you should be able to get payments that are low enough that you can comfortably handle them, enjoy riding, and then, you know, the next time you can get a bigger, better bike or something, or maybe pay cash for the next one. You know, if you're looking at a bike $5,000 or less, really there's no reason your payment should be more than like $150 a month or more. If it's more than that, they're charging a lot of interest, and or you have really, really bad credit. Just don't do that. Don't be paying 20% interest on a motorcycle, okay? I've seen that happen before. I'm not a big fan of that. If you have to pay 20% interest on a motorcycle, it's time to be patient and save up more money, okay? But if you can get a bike, $5,000 or less, $150 a month or less, something like that, and you'd rather do that than find a small bike or a really old bike or something like that, then that is an option. That's perfectly fine. It's my least recommended option, but you can get a nicer bike for a low monthly payment, so you can do that. You can finance them, okay? So that's it. That's been 5 ways, guys. 5 ideas for getting a motorcycle if you have $1,000 cash or less. I like to help people out there get into riding that maybe think it's not possible or think they can't afford it. Motorcycling is something that can cost a lot of money. Harley Davidson, I'm looking at you. But it's also something that can be got into for very inexpensive, and it can be a very inexpensive, enjoyable hobby if you have some sense about you, if you're willing to do your own maintenance, if you're willing to buy an inexpensive, not super fancy motorcycle, you can get into motorcycling and you can ride for years and years and years and not spend a whole lot of money doing it, okay? I hope that's helped somebody out there. Leave comments, questions, suggestions. You guys in the comments, make suggestions to each other. If there's stuff I forgot, throw it in the comments. Help each other out, okay? Be cool to each other. That's the whole point of this whole thing. I don't make these for any other reason than because I enjoy making the videos. I like talking to you guys, and I like building and helping the community, okay? Especially my newer riders out there. So that's it. That's my 5 tips. I'm Alex. Peace.